I sat there in the middle of a bustling American-style restaurant in San Diego, wearing the cardigan I always brought with me when I traveled. The eggs had just arrived, and the coffee was already cooling. My daughter, in the cream-colored dress I once complimented, put down her knife, tilted her head, and spoke as if stating something perfectly reasonable. "We're only being nice by letting you come along. Don't think you matter." No one blinked. The whole table just kept eating, like nothing had happened. My granddaughter stayed glued to her phone. My son-in-law poured himself another glass of wine, and me, I couldn't swallow. I set down my spoon. My hand trembled slightly, but no one even looked up at me. Only I could hear the soft clink of my coffee cup touching the porcelain plate and the sound of something inside me breaking. Turns out I wasn't the guest of honor. I was just the extra baggage there to make them look like a complete loving family. And they played the part so well. I remember those winters without a heater, nights in that tiny apartment with thin walls and a draft so cold it blew out the candle on the table. I wrapped Asher in 2 sweaters, held her close in my arms, and told her fairy tales in the quietest voice like it was all she needed to fall asleep peacefully. Asher was everything to me. When my husband left, I didn't have time to be sad. I just knew I had a child who needed food and education and love. I worked 2 jobs teaching part-time during the day, cleaning hotel rooms at night. No matter how tired I was, I still baked on weekends. It was the one thing I did not for money, but to remind her I was still here, that I still remembered what she loved. She adored apple pie. I used to joke one day when you have kids, I'll bake for them every Sunday. She'd laugh, wrap her flower-dusted arms around my neck, and smile wide. I thought that would be enough to keep her close. When Asher got into a university far from home, I emptied my savings all those extra tutoring hours and sold the old car I'd driven for nearly 10 years just to afford her housing. The day I saw her off at the station, I didn't say a word. I just stood behind the glass and watched. I believed that if I gave quietly enough, she would understand. Then Asher got married. Her husband was a decent man, had a stable job, owned a car. I was happy. I didn't expect to live with them, but when they asked me to help take care of the kids to save on daycare costs, I agreed. It started as just a few days a week, then it became the whole week. I never asked for money. I just requested a small room in the back of the house so I could cook and help with pickups. I paid my own utilities. Some months I even pitched in extra just to help make sure the kids eat well, I'd say. Asher never said no. I kept baking every week now for my grandchildren. But no one said the pies smelled nice. No one waited excitedly by the oven anymore. Just me quietly keeping the ritual to stop myself from feeling empty. I never demanded anything, but there were moments I couldn't ignore. Moments when I felt like, in this house, I was an object kept around because I was useful. Their conversations often skipped right over me like I wasn't even there. Once I walked by and overheard my son-in-law ask, "Is your mom planning to stay forever?" And Asher only sighed in response, no words. I never brought it up. I just looked at the worn photo in my wallet. The 3 of us back when Asher was in middle school. I was in the middle arms wrapped tightly around her. The edges were curled like an old letter. I always carried that photo, not because I forgot the present, but because I needed to remind myself there was a time. She needed me with all her heart. I used to think things changed when Asher got married, when I moved into the back room, when she started talking less. But recently, while sorting through old things, I remembered something else. Asher had just turned 18, newly accepted to a university out of state. I decided to visit unannounced. I brought a few things, some clothes, an apple pie, and a book, planned to stop by briefly, then leave. I arrived at her dorm. The door was unlocked. Inside, she was having a birthday party with friends. Loud music, laughter. She was having a great time. When she saw me, she froze. Then came over and whispered, "You came without telling me I'm supposed to be studying." I nodded, set down the pie, and walked away. I didn't step inside, didn't say another word. At the time, I told myself she was probably just surprised. She'd understand later. But looking back now, maybe that was the day she started pulling away. At first just a little, then more. No one said anything. By the time I noticed it was already too late. I believed that if I stayed quiet long enough someday she'd look back and see everything. But that morning in San Diego, between the clinking dishes and the toast that hadn't even cooled, I realized maybe I'd believed in the wrong thing. A week before the trip to San Diego, I video called my grandkids. My face appeared blurry on the screen, propped up on the kitchen shelf next to the old oven I'd kept for nearly 20 years. I had just come back from the flea market feeling light and cheerful. In my bag were two little surprises, a mint green crocheted teddy bear and a set of color-changing pencils. The moment I saw them, I thought of the kids. I have a surprise. When we're at the beach, you'll get to draw the sand, the sky, anything you want. I smiled, holding the gifts up to the camera. Annabelle, the younger one, 6 years old, with curls like a doll, squinted, then blurted out, "Mom says, you visit too much." The words dropped like something clattering onto the tile floor, and no one bothered to pick them up. I froze. My eyes stayed on the screen. My smile remained curved, like nothing had happened. But inside, a soft crack. Not loud, but unmistakable. I forced a chuckle. Well, then, this time, Grandma will just sit beside you, no bothering at all. The call ended. I sat still for a long while, the gifts still in my hands. That moment, something small slipped past me, something I didn't pay attention to. Behind Annabelle, I noticed the door to her room slightly ajar, and on the shelf, the red leather-bound notebook I'd given Asher for her birthday. Last year, the one with her name embroidered in gold thread was wedged carelessly among other books, its spine crushed. Unused. That night, I opened my yarn box. The purple sweater I'd been knitting for Annabelle was still unfinished. I picked up the needles, got through a few stitches, then stopped. Not because I was tired, but because I wasn't sure anymore if she'd even want to wear it. I closed the box, leaving the needles in place. No anger, no complaints, just a silence, cold, unfamiliar. I poured myself a cup of tea. When I sat down on the couch, my eyes happened to rest on the small clock hanging on the wall, a keepsake I bought back when I was still teaching. The glass was fogged slightly from the water stain, spreading across the ceiling just above it. I'd called a repairman several times. No one had come yet. Houses are like people, I thought. There are places that stay damp for a long time, and no one notices to patch them up. I leaned forward and pulled the old family photo from my wallet. The edges were worn. I'd pressed it into a hidden pocket, always kept it there like an anchor, keeping me from drifting away. But tonight, even that anchor felt lighter. And there I was, sitting in a lit-up kitchen surrounded by the scent of cinnamon butter and the soft ticking of a clock, feeling as empty as an old house waiting to be cleared out. Our first evening in San Diego, we had dinner at the Airbnb she rented near the beach, a place that was fully furnished, sterile, and spotless. So clean there wasn't any room left for feelings. Leo, my son-in-law, poured a glass of red wine and handed it to me with a smile as thin as paper. "For my dear mother-in-law." I took the glass. "Thank you, dear," I said, keeping my tone light. But his eyes had already looked away before I even lifted the glass to my lips. The dinner was polite. Everyone served themselves. No one asked if I wanted seconds. I tried to join in the conversation. When Amara, the older granddaughter now in 8th grade, mentioned her school play rehearsal, I smiled and said, "If you're free this weekend, Grandma got early tickets to see Matilda. Want to go together?" Asher looked up, set down her fork, and responded quickly, "We're busy this weekend, Mom. Just relax, okay?" Her tone wasn't loud, wasn't cold, but it was sharp enough to cut off my sentence mid-breath. I nodded, gave a gentle smile. "That's okay. I was just asking." Amara lowered her head and whispered something to her younger sister. Both girls giggled. I pretended not to hear. But I did, loud and clear. "Going with Grandma is boring." I kept smiling, but my throat began to dry. I took another sip of wine. The glass was still full, but my heart was overflowing with a quiet ache of being out of place. The next day after lunch, I got up and started clearing the dishes on my own. As I turned on the faucet, I heard Asher whisper to Leo. She always breaks something when she tries to help. I froze like a statue. The water kept running. My hand paused over a glass. I caught Leo glancing briefly in my direction, then he turned away silently, a plate and dessert, like nothing had been said. I gave a small nod, pulled my hands from the sink. "I think I'll rest for a bit," I said, and walked back to my room. The door closed behind me, but I could still hear the clinking of dishes outside, not breaking, just soft collisions, but they cut into me like knives. I sat at the edge of the bed, my eyes fallen on my small suitcase. Inside were two knitted sweaters I had just finished, one purple, one green. I had folded them neatly, even added little heart-shaped labels with each child's name. I was planning to give them the sweaters this weekend, but now, I wasn't so sure. I suddenly remembered the afternoon I arrived when I walked into the house as they were planning their kayaking trip. No one mentioned me in the plans. No one asked, "Mom, do you want to come?" So I said casually, "Grandma can stay and watch the bags if you need." A joke or so, I thought. But no one laughed. They just smiled politely, the kind of smile people give when they're tolerating a guest who wasn't really invited. That morning, the weather was oddly gentle. The sea breeze floated through the palm trees, sunlight soft as honey pouring across the street. We had breakfast at a retro-style diner, red velvet booths, Elvis posters on the wall. I'd taken Asher here once when she was 8 after a parent-teacher conference where her teacher praised her drawing skills. That day, I bought her a heart-shaped pancake. She smiled so brightly I forgot how exhausted I was from my night shift. Today she sat across from me, but her eyes never met mine. She focused on cutting food for the kids, reminding Leo to order more eggs. I smiled softly, turning the coffee cup in my hands. I just spoke with the art teacher at the local high school. If Amara's really into theater, I could help cover tuition for an advanced class. I expected a thankful glance, or at least a quiet thank you. But Asher paused, set her fork down, sat up straighter. Her voice wasn't loud, but colder than the morning breeze outside. "You already chip in every week. Do you have to involve yourself in everything?" Leo added in a flat tone, like something he'd been holding back for a while. "You don't have to carry every responsibility like you're still the parent." I looked up at them, not angry, just feeling a tightness at the back of my neck. I wanted to say that I never thought I was carrying anything, that I was just doing the best I could, the way a mother always does. But before I could speak, Asher went on, in a voice I never imagined my daughter would use with me. "In public during a family meal, in front of my grandchildren, we're only being nice by letting you come along. Don't think you matter." The sound of forks and knives continued from the next table. The scent of coffee still drifted gently through the air. But for me, everything stopped. I looked at my daughter, the girl I once carried through floodwater, the girl I sold my car for so she could study far from home, now sitting upright, calm, as if those words were just another part of breakfast. Not a blade through my chest. Amara paused, glanced at her mother, then at me. Her eyes flickered with confusion, but she didn't say a word. Leo didn't look up, and I nodded, very slightly, not in agreement. Just a quiet bow to myself, a quiet acknowledgement I heard you. I understand. I opened my wallet and left a few bills for the coffee. Then I stood up. No one stopped me, not a word. I walked slowly past the rows of tables, past the strangers who had no idea a heart had just been torn in half. I didn't cry, but my chest felt heavy like someone had filled it with stones. Once I was out of their sight, I paused near the restaurant window and looked at my reflection in the glass. A woman in a cream cardigan, hands trembling slightly, lips pressed tight. And I realized the most painful part wasn't what she said. It was the truth behind it, that they had probably thought that way for a long time. They just didn't bother hiding it anymore. A few minutes later, Leo noticed my leather wallet still lying on the table. I had forgotten it. He opened it meaning to call me back, but as he did, something fell out. An old photograph, 3 people, mother and daughter on each side, me in the middle. The corner of the photo where I stood had been folded down, not from time, but as if someone had deliberately bent it, trying to erase one part of the family picture. I returned to the hotel just before noon. The coastal city outside the window was still bright with sunshine, people still laughing in the streets. And I walked through the lobby like a shadow. No one noticed, no one needed to. The 6th-floor room was still quiet. The scent of room spray lingered gently in the air, just like yesterday morning. But I didn't turn on the lights. I let the natural light in warm enough like a thin blanket at dusk. I opened my suitcase, not hurried, not rushed, every motion slow and careful, as if I were folding away a chapter of my life. I took out the gifts I had lovingly prepared back home, two knitted sweaters, one purple, one green, neatly wrapped in paper bags, labeled in my handwriting for Annabelle and Amara. The color-changing pencil's price tag still intact. The mint green crocheted teddy bear with red threaded button eyes, every stitch carefully counted. I placed them together, not back in the suitcase, but into a clean gift bag, tying the ribbon just like before. Next, I opened my wallet, the family photo of the three of us at a spring fair long ago. I'd laminated it and kept it in the left pocket of my wallet for 20 years. Every time I reached for money, I saw it. A quiet reminder she used to love her mother. But today, my hand carefully slid the photo out slow and steady. I didn't tear it. I didn't take it with me either. I set it on the coffee table in the room, face down, and something inside me gently dropped. Not pain anymore, but a strange, quiet lightness, the kind that comes when you finally know you don't need to hold on any longer. When I left the restaurant earlier, the sea breeze had slipped through the thin fabric of my cardigan. I didn't look back, but someone did watch me. From the table on the left, just across the aisle, an elderly woman, silver hair cascading softly over her shoulders, a jade silk scarf around her neck. She sat with a cup of black tea and a worn notebook. As I passed, she tilted her head slightly, her gaze still following the family I left behind. She said nothing, just looked. The kind of look someone gives when they've seen this story too many times. When I disappeared from view, she took a small sip of tea, then slowly turned to the waitress clearing plates. Her voice was quiet but firm. I don't know what happened between them. But a mother like that, you don't find many. The waitress froze briefly, eyes flicking toward Asher's table, where breakfast was continuing, as if nothing at all had happened. 3 hours later, at the hotel reception, I handed over the gift bag, the wrapping still fragrant with cinnamon and freshly washed yarn. I didn't leave a name. I just said, Room 509B, for the two little girls. The young receptionist with round glasses and her hair in a bun paused. She looked at me as if she wanted to ask something but didn't know how. I gave a small nod, then turned to go. A few moments later, she was still standing there, clutching the bag in both hands. She looked toward the door I had disappeared through, then carefully took a small sheet of paper, wrote the room number in neat handwriting, and added a note, deliver by hand. Do not misplace. I ordered a car to the airport, opened the app, and booked the earliest flight back home. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't text Asher. Not out of anger, but because I didn't want to wait for anything anymore. At the check-in counter, the ticket agent asked gently, traveling alone, ma'am. I nodded, smiled calm and steady. Yes, this time, just me. I didn't feel lonely, just finished. While waiting to board, I sat by the glass watching planes take off in the distance. The wind tapped softly against the window, cold but clearing. I opened my phone, scrolled through the photo gallery. Snapshots appeared one by one: Amara's first birthday, Annabelle's fifth-grade camping trip, the family smiling beneath the Christmas tree. In every single photo, I was behind the camera, preserving memories for someone else. Today I tapped Select All and pressed Delete. Not because I didn't love them, but because I couldn't keep holding on to things that made me constantly prove my love deserved to be returned. I stared at the empty screen, then turned off the phone, slipped it into my bag, a quiet act of letting go, no fanfare, no tears. The plane took off. For the first time in years, I left nothing behind. No hopes, no reaching back. Just a woman by the window, one hand resting lightly on her bag, eyes closed, and a heart finally still. 3 days after that breakfast, Asher called me for the first time nearly midnight. I didn't answer. The phone buzzed softly on the kitchen table, where I was stirring a pot of beef stew just for myself. The next morning, 5 more missed calls. Messages poured in. Mom, where are you? Are you mad at us? I'm sorry, we need to talk. I read each one, then turned the phone face down and kept stacking fresh oatmeal cookies into a glass jar, the kind I used to make for my grandkids. Now, I make them for myself. On the 5th day, Leo sent a short, polite email. We're finalizing Amara's portfolio for the art school application. If you're still willing to support the tuition, please reach out soon. I didn't respond. I had already closed the joint bank account I'd quietly added Asher to so she could withdraw funds whenever needed. I had also revoked access to the shared budget file, the one I maintained every month, thinking I was helping them stay stable. Asher called the bank only to be told the account no longer existed. She tried the landline at my house, which I'd canceled the previous week. All she got was the cold voice of the operator. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Thanksgiving came. No text inviting me to dinner. No cheerful family photo like every other year. No sweet voice from Asher reminding me to bring my apple pie. I hung a small wreath of dried maple leaves on my front door, set the table for one, roasted a single plate of chicken for myself. I took a picture of the meal, not to post, just to remember. For the first time in 30 years, I spent Thanksgiving alone, and I wasn't sad. One early winter afternoon, Asher sat in her usual coffee shop, across from her best friend Nora. The sunlight slanted across her hair, gently stirring the foam of her lukewarm latte. Nora asked softly, "She still hasn't responded." Asher nodded, eyes rimmed red. "I didn't think she'd actually leave." Her voice cracked. "I thought she was just upset. That she'd come back like always with a fresh batch of cookies, a small gift bag. But this time," she clenched her fist, "she really disappeared." Nora said nothing. She simply slid a napkin across the table. Asher sat in silence, staring out at the street. It wasn't about the tuition. It wasn't about financial inconvenience. It was about a new fear she hadn't faced until now, that her mother had stopped waiting, stopped enduring, and stopped loving, at least in that unconditional way she'd once believed was forever. That evening back in the San Diego apartment, Asher eventually fell asleep after a long day. Her eyes were still puffy. Amara stepped into the living room. On the table sat a gift bag the hotel clerk had delivered earlier. The woman had only said, "For the two little girls in room 509B. Amara hadn't opened it right away. She stared at the soft, cream-colored ribbon, then slowly peeled the wrapping back. Inside were two sweaters, one purple, one green, still carrying the fresh scent of newly washed yarn. Between them was a letter, unsealed with a handwritten note. "Dear Asher." Amara hesitated for a moment, then unfolded it. The paper was slightly creased, the ink blue. "Dear Asher, I wasn't going to write, but tonight looking at the cold teacup on the table, I thought maybe I should leave a few words, not to blame, not even so you'd understand. Just in case one day you want to come back, you'll know I never truly left." And the letter wasn't long, just a few simple memories. The night they camped out in the living room, the time Asher failed her college entrance exam, Christmas Eve when they slept under the pine tree. "Maybe I interfered too much in your life, but I never learned how to love just enough. I only knew how to care in my own way. A pie, a scarf, or sometimes just quiet." Near the end, the writing paused. "I only hope that if one day Annabelle or Amara ever ask, 'Did Grandma ever love me?'" And that was it. No signature, no closing. Amara sat still. She pulled the sweaters into her arms. For the first time, she didn't see her grandmother as the old, annoying woman her mother often described, but as someone who had always been there, just unnoticed. The next morning, she didn't say anything to her mom. She simply wore the purple sweater to school, carefully folded the cuffs, as if holding on to a little bit of warmth. But it was already too late. The apology had never been spoken. The family photo still lay face down in the hotel room, and that mother, she was no longer a default part of their lives, just an absence that no one had the courage to fill. A few days later, the air remained crisp and the sunlight thin as paper. In her second-floor bedroom, Amara opened a drawer to grab her jacket. Her hand brushed against the folded purple sweater. Next to it, a tiny heart-shaped sticker slightly wrinkled at the corner. She paused, pulled the sweater from the drawer, studied the hand-knitted pattern, the even, careful stitches. And at the collar, a tiny fabric tag stitched with a white A. She walked slowly down to the kitchen, where her mother stood at the sink washing dishes. Bathed in soft window light, Amara hesitated, then asked quietly, "Mom, is Grandma still mad at me?" The question was barely a whisper, but in the stillness of the kitchen, it dropped like a pebble into a quiet pond. Asher didn't turn around right away, her wet hands clenched slightly around a spoon. Her face unchanged, but her gaze fell on the hand towel by the sink. An old towel, stitched with an A gift from her mother last winter. Amara lowered her head, hugged the sweater to her chest. No one said another word. The camera slowly pulls back toward the window. Through the glass, we see soft light settling over the shoulders of mother and daughter. And in the child's hands, the purple sweater still rests warm intact. No words needed, just one simple truth for the audience to know. That gift had reached exactly where it was meant to go. And maybe, just maybe, something small had begun to grow. 1 week after that morning, Amara was assigned a writing exercise at school. Describe someone who once loved you unconditionally. She sat for a long time staring at the blank page. She didn't think of her mother. She didn't think of her father. Her mind was filled only with the image of an older woman, silver hair, always knitting folding sweaters neatly and keeping a tin full of cookies. The purple sweater still lay folded neatly in her drawer. Sometimes she would take it out, not to wear it, just to run her fingers over the stitches, as if trying to remember something long gone. That evening, while her mom was washing dishes, Amara went into her room. She pulled out a blank sheet of paper and began to write. Grandma once knitted me a purple sweater with the letter A stitched on it. I used to think she was annoying, but the day she left breakfast and never came back, I finally understood. Some people love you quietly, and when their silence lasts too long, it's because they've been hurt far too much. She folded the letter, didn't write a name, just scribbled on the envelope. To the one who still loves me. Amara didn't know where to send it. She glanced at her mom resting tiredly on the sofa. Then she stepped forward and held out the letter. "Mom, do you still remember Grandma's old address?" Asher froze. That question wasn't just asking for an address. It was a mirror reflecting something she had long forgotten. Late autumn air drifted in. In a small house on the edge of town, I sat by an old window, a cup of hot tea in hand. Steam fogged the glass, but I didn't wipe it away. I just sat there staring through the haze as if looking into a memory, not sharp, but still very much alive. I once thought I was the first to understand what letting go felt like, but I wasn't. I had forgotten. My mother had done it first. When I was 24 after college, I moved out. There was a time I fought with her a bad fight. I was stressed at work, felt like she was interfering too much. I remember saying, "Don't make me feel guilty every time you help when nobody asked." I didn't look back, but I heard her knife stop against the cutting board for just a second, then resume like nothing had happened. That evening I came home late. Dinner was set for 2, but she was gone. No note, just an old notebook on the kitchen shelf, and a small paper tucked inside. "You'll understand. But when you do, I may no longer need you to." I kept the notebook, but never opened it again. Maybe I was afraid. Years later, when I became Asher's mother, I told myself I'd never be like mine. I wouldn't repeat that cycle. But now, as I folded the last of my belongings, as I left the gift bag at the front desk without a name, I finally understood. Letting go wasn't anger. It was exhaustion. It was trying long and hard and realizing that was enough. This house once belonged to my mother, the place I grew up in, then left, then returned 2 years later with empty hands and a heart full of bruises. The rose trellis I planted as a girl soft pink climbers now covered the wooden fence completely, quiet, persistent. No one tended to it, no one spoke of it. Yet it still grew, still bloomed. The breeze drifted in, brushing my scarf. I tugged it closer, took a sip of tea. No one was calling, no one needed anything. And yet, I didn't feel alone. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing anyone. I didn't have to guess what others wanted. Didn't have to prove I was enough. Didn't have to do everything just to earn a place in someone's heart. It started to rain outside. Not heavy, just steady. The kind of rain that only falls when something old needs to be washed away. I sat quietly by the window hands, still wrapped around my tea steam fogging the glass. Then, like dust dancing in golden light, a memory rose to the surface. I had once walked away from my mother, too. I was 23 moving out for the first time. And I told her with a sharp voice, "You always need to be in control. You even have an opinion about my curtains." She didn't argue. She just quietly folded her things, packed them into the same old suitcase she brought with her when she first got married. Before she left the apartment I had just rented, she stood at the door facing away. I didn't look back, but I heard her say softly, like she was speaking to herself, "You'll understand someday." But by then, I might not need it anymore. Back then, I thought it was guilt tripping. It took me years of folding laundry myself, of being pushed aside at family dinners, to realize that wasn't bitterness. It was a prophecy, spoken by a mother who knew that love is not always understood in time. I set my tea down, opened the old notebook, the leather one that used to rest in my purse, now filled with recipes, scribbled thoughts, and unsent letters. The last page was still blank. I wrote, "I still love you, but I also need to learn how to love myself." My hand trembled slightly, but the writing was clear, a new kind of promise, not to anyone else, but to me. On the wooden table near the window sat a letter, unstamped, carefully placed beside a stack of old books. The first line read, "Dear Asher," and then nothing. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because some things don't need to be said, just left there like a door left slightly ajar in case someone someday wants to come back through. I didn't return to San Diego, didn't move to any other city. I came back to the old town. The house was still the same. The roof had aged, but the porch was still wide enough for a wicker chair and a pot of freshly planted mint. In the mornings, I watered the plants. At noon, I kneaded dough. By evening, I baked apple pies, still the old recipe. Just a touch less sugar, a bit more cinnamon, and a different bake time. Not for anyone else, just to see if things could still come out right. I opened a small bakery. No grand sign, no ribbon cutting. Just a white window and a chalkboard that read, "Homemade pies warm every afternoon." I wasn't waiting for anyone to show up. But one evening in a light drizzle, I was wiping down a tray when I heard the doorbell ring. A young girl stood outside, her hair wet, holding a fabric tote. It was Amara. She didn't cry, didn't apologize, didn't say grandma. She just looked at me for a long time, then asked softly, "Do you remember me?" I smiled gently. "I remember. Your eyes are still the same, like when you used to watch the oven." She nodded, opened her bag, and pulled out a blank notebook. "I didn't come to say sorry. I came to learn how to bake, because I want to keep what you gave me. The things Mom forgot." I looked at her, no longer a child, but someone finding her way back. In the oven, the scent of apple pie was beginning to fill the room. I glanced out the window again. The rose trellis swayed gently in the breeze. There was a lightness in the air, not an ending, just the right moment to pause. If one day the person who loved you the most turns away, would you hold on or let go to finally hold on to yourself?